Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Devaney, not just for your presence here today and the great work you are doing for the Recovery Board, but for the great work you have done a number of years as an Inspector General. I had the good fortune to work as a United States Attorney and spent much time with some of your colleagues and appreciate the significance of their efforts, but oftentimes as well struggle with the reality that we would be off just touching the corners sometimes of what we believed was out there. And I have been intrigued by your testimony about some of the tools you have been discussing that can greatly enhance our ability to search not just where we have been, but in real time, because your words, I think, to focus on preventing fraud from occurring in the first time rather than detecting it after the fact. So can you tell me a little bit about the Recovery Explorer tool that you have been implementing and how that works?
Well, the Recovery Operations Center, which we established fairly early on, after about 6 months, utilizes analytical tools that, as I mentioned earlier, have been used heretofore in the intelligence world and the some law enforcement settings, and applying them to spending. And if you think of fraud on a continuum, where on one end of the timeline the fraudster is thinking about stealing money, and the other end is sort of when he has it and he's running down the street. What we're trying to do is we're trying to push the ball further up towards the front end so that we're either preventing fraud in the first instance or at least interrupting it in the middle, so that countless times we've been able to detect a company or an individual that's gotten money that probably shouldn't have been. It doesn't mean that they've committed a crime. It just means that we need to stop and look. So we've asked the agencies to stop the flow of money so that it all doesn't go out the door before we're able to prevent it. Now, as I mentioned earlier, it's difficult to articulate success in this area, how much you've prevented from happening. It's a lot easier for me to stand here and talk about the number of arrests or number of referrals to the Department of Justice. And that's what I've done for most of my career, and played that sort of stat game. It's harder to articulate success in the prevention business. I struggle with it myself, but I know that I think we've prevented fraud in this instance, and I think transparency has a lot to do about it. But it's also about sort of a mind shift that IGs and other enforcement entities are having about not just detecting it, but preventing it from happening.
What kind of data does it display when you're talking about the broad spectrum of information that's out there? Is there an intelligent aspect to this in which it's looking for particular indicators, or it makes available data that then somebody can mine with a specific purpose?
Well, we do have formulas and algorithms that we use to run against the database, the 1512 database, the recovery database, if you will, that identifies anomalies for us. Once again, this doesn't mean necessarily that a crime has been committed or even the fraud has happened. It might mean, for instance, this would be a good candidate to audit, to have an IG do an audit on it, not an investigation, but an audit. On the other hand, it might identify, as we do countless times, money going to somebody that's on the excluded parties list, because we have that database in-house. I happen to think that one of the issues that's underway in government right now, being managed by OMB, is the do not pay list. I happen to think that our platform could do the do not pay list fairly soon. I think we have 3 of the databases of the 5 right now. If we got the other 2, we could probably stand that up maybe in a month or 2. So there's great opportunities here to have it centralized in one place so that both agency personnel can come into the Recovery Operations Center before they give the money out, and that enforcers like IGs or the FBI or GAO can access information, and maybe on top of some of the other databases, we have the law enforcement databases that they would have access to.
And so you're talking right now about work that's done within your data system and monitoring the dollars that have been part of the Recovery Act. But my assumption here is this has tremendous applicability across the various agencies, where we'd be able to look at somebody that's on a do not pay list that might be doing work with 2 different kinds of agencies.
I think it does have that application, and that's what I'm excited about, that we take what we've done here and apply it to all government spending. We'll be preventing billions of dollars of fraud, And we may be putting investigative bodies and U.S. attorneys out of business.
Well, there's plenty of work for all of us to do. When you talk billions of dollars, that makes a big difference. Thank you for your service and your forward thinking, Mr. Chairman. I yield back my